You are now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Today, we will continue our conversation about probiotics. I wanted to continue this conversation because during our initial conversation with Natasha Trenev, the mother of probiotics, there was still more questions I wanted to ask her. Thankfully, she was gracious enough to return to provide additional insights in the world of probiotics. During our first conversation, Natasha and I covered a variety of topics, including how probiotics help to heal the gut, the purpose of that hard gel capsule she uses within her company, medical conditions that probiotics help, and whether or not we need to take probiotics even if we're all healthy. Today, we will dive a little deeper as we hear additional insights from Natasha. Natasha, by the way, is a developmental scientist, author, and educator. And she's also the president and founder of Natren and has been regarded as the mother of probiotics. So with that, Natasha, welcome again to your second episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Thank you. This topic is so prolific. We could do 20 of them and still people would be learning.
That's right. And learning we will. And I think it's so important that we get this message out that there are ways to heal beyond just your diet, just exercise, sleep, and the other things I emphasize in my NEST acronym. So I know that before we ended the last episode, I asked you, what you plan to do to protect your nest. So I want to start our conversation by asking you, have you started to make some time for yourself as you promised in the last episode?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying, but you see, my job is so big. And God bless me, I'm turning 75 in 2 weeks. So, but I've got this huge autism program that I'm working on because I made a commitment a year ago when I saw the numbers that, now the ASD range is 1 in 30. And I said something has to be done. And so, and it's not criticizing anybody, but I realize that why we don't make progress because everybody's got their own little turf that they're protecting their ideas and they don't do it maliciously. It's just the way, research and data was designed. And I'm trying to break that. And I said, my only concern is to get the children better. Whether or not it gets published in a prestigious journal or not is secondary to me. I don't really care to get accolades for me. My wish has always been to teach people how to take care of themselves. And there's been so many handicaps thrown at us in the last several decades. And we have chronic illnesses exploding now, especially among the young people, that I said, I just can't leave because this means too much to me. And since we're a hybrid of bacteria and human cells, and our whole body replaces itself every year, in other words, every human cell we have, the 50 trillion, gets replaced in 360 days. So we need to take stock of that and to say that we can be healthy, we can enjoy great health, we can enjoy better life, and it's not just healthy gut because the gut affects everything in your body, even how your heart works, things in your bloodstream, even how every organ works in your body, how your brain functions, how your skin looks. Everything. And as I've said many times before, I don't make the rules. I'm just here trying to teach you because what we've done environmentally is what's killed a lot of bacteria and created dozens of antibiotic resistant bacteria that are everywhere in our community, in our food supply, on the counters of your favorite store, everywhere. So we have to become more aware and we have to change that paradigm by giving our body the tools that it needs to heal itself.
So one of the reasons why I thought it would be helpful to add some additional content was personal, which is I have this history of a irritable bowel. So what I found in my experience, and I shared some of this last time, is that when I took my probiotic, once I discovered your company, my symptoms just went away in really a very short amount of time. If I stopped taking my probiotic, within a month or so, I would start having symptoms again.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started my low carb diet, and then I would run out of probiotics while I was on a low carb diet, I would actually do okay even when I wasn't taking the probiotic. So I guess my question is, I live in the low carb world where I live. A lot of the experts, whether it's Dr. Ken Berry, who, talks about the perfect human diet, right? They speak of this desire to, you should be able to get everything you need from your food, right? And if it's a perfect human diet, you shouldn't have to supplement, right? And that was kind of in some ways somewhat verified because I did okay with the low carb diet. So my question is, how do we reconcile that? If I felt better, maybe I'm not 100% better, how is it that the probiotic is necessary when the diet may be helpful as well?
Well, perfect question. And I can just tell you, based on my 54 years of experience with working with every diet guru imaginable. I used to do regular shows with Dr. Atkins. I know all about the Palm Beach diet. This is the classic Candida diet, is the low carbohydrate diet. So I'm very familiar with that. What's happening to us and why diet no longer is sufficient is because that the bacteria that we're ingesting are much more powerful, and they can interact with you, because just remember 40% of your dry weight fecal matter is bacteria, and the bacteria are constantly entering your body through your nose, through your mouth, and possibly through drinking something. So they are changing the ecosystem inside your body. And because we are so heavily polluted, don't forget, an ingredient like glyphosate that's used in Roundup was found in 80% of the urine samples across the country. Now, glyphosate was registered as a very potent antibiotic before it became a weed killer. And so you are, exposed to these chemicals, rather in the air or as substitute found in our food. And when you're exposed, you're constantly disturbing that 100 trillion microbes in your gut on a daily basis. So you may, because you've done a good job and you've replanted your probiotics, you're not seeing as much problems when you can maintain your low carb diet. But the minute you're going to get stressed, you're going to find out, oh. And the reason being is that I've also, before I started in this field, did extensive research to find out what were the healthy populations and why did they live long? Because who in the heck wants to live to be 90 and be in a nursing home? I don't. So that's the premise. You can have a long life, but you don't want to be on 5 prescriptive drugs when you hit 50. That's not what I'm looking forward to. So what I'm saying is that the bacteria become an essential part because of what we've done to our environment. Everywhere we're exposed to these antimicrobial substances, whether we're breathing it in the air, drinking it, or eating it. So it's changing that flora. Plus, the stress level we're all under, stress causes our body to produce various chemicals that is very destructive to the beneficial bacteria. And guess what? They want to leave you because you're no longer an environment where they can thrive. And the objective of every species of bacteria is to thrive. So if you become a bad place for them to thrive, they're going to leave. So that's why in every culture that I've studied, they would have some kind of a fresh probiotic food in their diet, which was included at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day. And of course, they had a good lifestyle. They ate fresh food and fresh fruit and vegetables. They had some meat. They had, they had a normal amount of either rice or bread. So everything was, done according to what was healthy for that population. and they didn't have a lot of stress because they had a very good community structure. So that's what's important. And as I said, until we get to that state where we have those healthy community structures, we certainly, one of the things we need on a daily basis is a good probiotic that can survive, shelf life, that can make it through the stomach, that can is resistant to bile. Otherwise, we're going to be exposed to a lot of problems. And when we present with an ailment, it's already too late because we could have stopped it a year ago or 2 years ago because it builds. It doesn't just pop up automatically.
Well, that's helpful. And full disclosure, I definitely still take probiotics. I take your company's
And
probiotic, and I use it. Even though I had that experience, I use it as my insurance policy. See, once you've had a horrible experience with a stomach that was not happy, you don't want to go back to that life. So for me, I even before I had your feedback, I use it as insurance. So I really wanted to
Mhm.
ask that question. I want to be authentic to my audience, and just hear your perspective. So the next question that I wanted to bring up, which is, it really makes me think about my functional medicine training. And one thing I heard from them is all diseases start in your gut, right? And I
Absolutely.
just and it's just so true. So why is that a statement that the average person checking out this episode should fully understand?
Well, to make it simple, and I make it as simple as possible, your gut is lined with 100 trillion microbes. About 160 species are specific to you, and they line that GI wall. And whenever you're under stress, they get thrown off your GI wall, and then other critters can squat there and cause problems. So there are bacteria in your blood. There are bacteria in every organ in your body. There's a bacteria component of your mitochondria. There's even bacteria in your brain cells. Okay. So everywhere in our body, there are bacteria, and we are actually a hybrid of bacteria and human cells. So wherever there's a potential for disease, meaning a fall down of the normal functioning cycle, it's manifested. Now, let me tell you what can happen. You can have brain problems. We know that Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, mood swings, depression, anxiety, even epilepsy is connected to the second brain in our gut. And this is published data. This is not my opinion only. So we know that just the brain function alone is very well affected. So even if you have a heart problem, because if you're not digesting your food and the uptake of your food is not good in causing inflammation of the arteries because too many bacteria inside the arteries flowing through your heart, they're the ones that cause the inflammation because the immune system recognizes, oh, we got a problem. So the immune system starts destroying the lining of your veins and arteries because it's trying to locate those bacteria that are causing the problem. And that's what causes the plaque to accumulate on your arteries and cause heart attacks and strokes.
Wow.
So,
Just hearing your thoughts again, it's like you're going back to school. So I appreciate you sending me back to school. I It makes me understand how important it is that we fully understand our bodies, right? It just seems like the basic knowledge of how the body fuels itself,
mhm.
it's like a lifesaver. So talk a little bit about how important it is that people understand how the body functions, including clinicians. A lot of, again, the average doctor only gets the standard is at least 25 hours of nutrition education.
Mhm.
Most don't even reach that standard. I think the last time I checked it out, only about 25% of medical schools reach the standard of 25 hours, but most don't even, so that's a very frightening stat. So how are doctors going to teach people how to heal if they don't even understand the basic knowledge? But how important is it for the average person to understand how the body fuels itself?
Absolutely 1000% the most necessary knowledge that every person needs to have. If you don't know how your body works, you're going to be miserable. And we've been taught to take magic pills to hide a symptom, manipulate a symptom, whatever. But we can learn and should learn how the body works. First of all, even medical doctors don't even remember what digestion is and what the process is. So I have to, even medical doctors, I have to review and say, remember, digestion begins in your mouth. When you put anything in your mouth, you have a very prolific microbiome in your mouth. In fact, sometimes the number of bacteria in the mouth, the variety of bacteria outnumbers what you have in your gut. So this is a warehouse of active bacteria roaming around. Now, the food that you eat, unless it's sterile, has what we call a bacterium, has its own bacteria. So, the digestion begins in the mouth. That's why I tell people chew your food 10 times. So now the food hits the stomach. Why does the stomach have such corrosive stomach acid? And I'll tell you why. It's brilliant. The bacteria are almost 100% protein. What does the stomach break down? The protein in your foods. So while it's breaking down the protein in your foods, it's also killing the bacteria so that it doesn't get dropped into your intestinal tract. Now, is that brilliant? That's absolutely brilliant when I think about it.
Yeah.
So if you are suppressing your stomach acid, not only are you not digesting your protein, you're allowing a lot of bacteria to escape into your small intestine. And now we have an explosion of something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it's very difficult to get rid of, by the way. Like I said, there's an explosion. It's a huge amount of people that are suffering from that. And it's very unpleasant. It can lead to cancer and other diseases when those kind of diseases are not handled. So now, if your stomach is functioning properly and that bacteria and food is dropped in your small intestine, now the bacteria have to survive bile. Bile is, alkaline, where stomach acid is acidic, right? So now the bile does its second function, and that's where most of your carbohydrate digestion takes place. So in order for the friendly bacteria to survive, they have to be bile tolerant or bile resistant. You see how this is fantastic?
Yeah, you gotta understand this, and just hearing you. First of all, nobody taught me about SIBO until I did my nutrition and functional medicine's master's
Yeah.
program. None of that was mentioned in my entire 4 years of medical school.
Yeah.
Number two, it sounds like the proton pump inhibitors, Nexium, and all those acids are
Mhm.
probably causing trouble too. Because if I don't have the acid to properly digest the protein, I'm going to have some proteins that are left behind that are too large. And if they get absorbed, I can see how that's going to increase my risk for, autoimmune diseases and things like that. So
Precisely.
we have and so we're treating symptoms with medication, not understanding why we're ill. And then we have secondary complications because of how we treat the illnesses.
Right.
That's very scary. So that's very insightful.
Yeah, well, I want to say what's very important. You mentioned proton pump inhibitors. It's also H2 blockers. Now, you don't have to remember this, folks. It's anything that disrupts the acid production in your stomach. When that happens, and now there's huge number of class action lawsuits against, an H2 inhibitor, which is called Zantac. But it's not just because of Zantac. Anything that inhibits the production of acid in your stomach opens you up to a host of diseases, autoimmune diseases, cancer, which, by the way, Zantac is being sued for the cause of multiple cancers in the body. Because just think of this: when that protein doesn't get digested, it becomes, attacked by the immune system, can cause food allergies, food sensitivities, overactivity of the immune system, can possibly lead to an autoimmune disease. And that protein that doesn't get digested also gets attacked by the other bacteria that are living inside your intestinal tract. It becomes food for them. So it's a host of problems when you stop the normal digestive process.
It's so important that we, again, shift the paradigm from symptom treatment, disease management to What's the root cause of the
Mhm.
problem? Something as simple as reducing belly fat will take some of the pressure off your stomach and potentially reduce the stomach being pushed up and leading to hiatal hernias. Almost all my patients who reduce belly fat have improvements or resolution in their heartburn because they're structurally in a much better place than they were beforehand, not to mention the benefits of probiotics. Now, another thing that I think about with my Nest and Rope acronym is related to mental health, because the N and the Nest touches on our thoughts. The T touches on recovering from trauma. The E in the
Mhm.
rope touches on making sure we focus on our emotions. Now, so with that in mind, what would you say about why the abuse of our minds and bodies, right, promoted by this insane modern society filled with stress, right, can lead to chronic and life-threatening illnesses?
A very short explanation. It's really a 2 hour explanation, but a short explanation is that stress, remember, causes blood to flow to your extremities. Why? Because we were designed to evade a saber-toothed tiger to save our life. Now, when that stress is continued because of our mental conditioning, that means the blood flow keeps flowing to our extremities, and we start producing cheap proteins. When we produce cheap proteins, either because we're not digesting them in our stomach or because we're under constant stress, that will produce disease. It depends on our genetic makeup and what it takes to trigger our genes, because the genes don't cause disease. They have the formula to cause disease or health, but you have to trigger them into spontaneous function. Otherwise, the genes are not responsible for your illness. It's what you're doing. The three things that can trigger your genetic makeup is your thought, your stress level, your thoughts, the toxins you ingest, and the bacteria in your gut. So you see how that essential unity, that communication that's going on inside of a GI tract becomes so important. Now, on top of that, when you have stress, you stop producing, you now induce the second brain not to produce enough serotonin and dopamine that can be funneled up the vagus nerve to the first brain. So it becomes a vicious cycle. You're not producing the chemicals that your brain needs to be happy and function properly. And you're causing the stress loop to continue. And then we take medication, and that upsets the chemical balance in our brain and gut function. And it becomes a vicious cycle. And that's what we have to understand better, that in order to fix the gut, we also have to calm down, stop stressing out, get into meditation, get into a more spiritual space, relax, start enjoying other people, get together, eat your food with the right chewing and digestion, and take a good probiotic every day. Because, as I said, the only reason I'm still working is because I realized that we have a whole society that we need to save that really doesn't understand that vital, alliance between the bacteria and your human cell structure.
It's really an ecosystem that is impacted by so many different aspects. That's why I'm so thankful that I was able to, through my training, think about the nest and the rope acronym, because it really is just a constant reminder. And we've touched on the stress, the trauma, and the thinking. What about exercise? Does exercise have an impact on how our gut's going to perform, relative to,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and I did study that. Now, look, excessive exercise can be detrimental. As I told people, marathon running is not good for you. Running several miles a day is not good for you. Uh, Walking is one of the best exercises you can engage in. Because why are Europeans so much more healthy? Because they walk everywhere.
that's right.
Your body was designed to move, but it wasn't designed to be stressed out like you do in some what I call these extreme sports. So yes, exercise. In fact, they found that when you engage in moderate exercise, it actually stimulates the good bacteria to grow and to like your environment inside the GI tract. But when you have too excessive exercise, which produces different chemical byproducts, you become a less desirable location for these friendly bacteria to live.
That makes a lot of sense. I also I know we just talked about speaking of the ecosystem, we just talked about the PPIs, proton pump inhibitors. You mentioned
Mhm.
the H2 blockers. So when you think about prescription medications, like I use them as bridge therapy. I literally just released a video about Ozempic and how, how do you get Ozempic covered for people who want to use it for not just diabetes, but weight loss? And it costs like $900 to $1,000 a month, which is ridiculous. But, but what role does prescription drugs play? Because in my mind, it's bridge therapy until we master our lifestyle or get a little
Mhm.
better. And I find that people can transition off of medicine when they do that in most cases, not all cases. So
Mhm.
what role does medications play?
Well, I have a very simple explanation. Western medicine is ideal if you have a critical situation. If you need to go to the hospital, God forbid, you need that extreme health care. That's where Western medicine works because, boy, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world than America or Western Europe where they really know how to use allopathic medicine to take care of an emergency. That's what allopathic medicine is good for, to take care of an emergency and to lessen the pain or the symptoms until your body can adjust by itself. The problem, I mean, even when the proton pump inhibitors came on, doctors were advised not to let their patients use it for more than 2 weeks. In fact, when you're in the hospital, they only give it to you for a week. But I know people who've been taking it for years. See, Western medicine was not designed to work with your body to allow the body to heal itself. It's to take care of a symptom that's damaging to the body while the body adjusts and learns how to manage itself.
So let's think about I'm thinking about the big picture now. So I've been convinced personally that I benefit from probiotics and I continue to take them.
Hmm.
Um, but one of the things that I have been able to do over the years, with your company, is to talk to somebody who advises you, right? Now, my
Hmm.
question is, we're all individually made different, right? And there may be some general themes. I think you mentioned in the past that there was like four. In the first episode, you said there were four main bacteria that you focus on because those are the ones that are most helpful. But
Right.
when you think about an individual, right? We're so different. If I had a twin who, if I lived on the East Coast, they lived on the West Coast, we have different environments and other factors that impact how we interact with the environment. Is there a way to truly individualize the recommendations, or is it more of a general approach that has to be taken if somebody were to engage in this probiotic journey?
Well, let me tell you that each person has a composition of 160 to 170 species of microbes unique to them, like their fingerprint. Okay. So I know a lot of people who are doing a lot of testing. They got algorithms and computer programs trying to discern from stool samples what the composition of microbes is in each person's body. And the reason I stick to these four main bacteria and why I do everything in my power to make sure that they're grown properly, that they survive properly, because they've been in the literature for 100 years and they've been used successfully by cultures who are long lived and healthy. Okay. That's my primary objective because, yes, you can look at the composition, and some companies are now starting to sell bacteria to help with glucose management. This one is selling something for a symptom. And I think that that's a very wrong approach. You should never use bacteria to control symptoms because bacteria are smarter than we are and they only perform because it's in their best interest. So when you start fooling around with what I call these designer bacteria, soil bacteria, you're opening up yourself to a whole possibility of grief, because you never know when those bacteria might become aggressive against your body. That's why I want to only use bacteria that have lived with cultures that have proven to have healthy, long lives and that have been utilized effectively and are in the literature for at least 100 years.
Mm. That's interesting. So I'm also still trying to figure out why I feel better on a low carb diet and had a interesting effect on my body compared to, the probiotics. They both did me wonderfully good things.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things I know about probiotics is their ability to help create short chain fatty acids. And
Right.
so could you, I don't know, just any comments on the role of short chain fatty acids and making us healthy, and why like maybe a very low carb diet can have an impact? Any thoughts on those concepts?
Yeah, well, without getting specific about the short chain fatty acids, let me just put it this way. We have abused our dietary habits for the last 50, 60 years. We've consumed high levels of simple carbohydrates that have become direct foods for the bacteria in our gut. And unfortunately, those simple carbohydrates usually stimulate the growth of yeast, and they stimulate the growth of unwanted bacteria because, believe it or not, the beneficial bacteria like different simple sugars than the bacteria that like the garbage that we're consuming. And so, what we've done with our diet, we've selected to grow those bacteria. In fact, when I did a study, when I was a consultant on a study in the late 1970s in juvenile hall, we found that 70% of the violence was decreased when their diet was changed.
Mm.
Just from a high sugary diet to a normal holistic diet that benefited their thoughts. So yes, the diet has a tremendous effect, and the short chain fatty acids are a compound that helps our body to utilize them to heal ourselves, and they're very important. There's something also called a butyrate that's produced by a certain bacteria in the gut that can, heal the intestinal lining. It's not a good supplement to take because a lot of these supplements don't survive stomach acid and bile to get into our system. So we have to rely on the beneficial bacteria to stimulate the production of short chain fatty acids, which I can say have a lot of healing benefits in the body, including something like a butyrate.
That's very helpful. And again, it's helping to provide clarity as to why the microbiome that's proper can help as it relates to that, and maybe even the diet. Now, another thing that's always talked about in my functional medicine training is, I don't know if is Lactobacillus rhamnosus one of the bacteria that you use, or no? Is that one of your
I don't
four?
use that, and I don't
Okay.
have a problem with it. But you see, there's again various levels of a bacteria rhamnosus. Rhamnosus cultures were used historically as cheese starter cultures. And again, it depends on the strain. You can have a rhamnosus, but it's like any other bacteria. If you don't grow it in the medium that it likes, it's not going to waste its cellular energy to produce byproducts that it's going to benefit your body. It's
Okay.
as simple as that. And that's one thing people don't understand. Yes, there is a core of bacteria that has been beneficial and is found in human health, but it depends the strain selection and how you grow that strain is very important, because if you don't grow that strain properly, you have to induce it to produce these wonderful byproducts for itself and ourselves.
Mhm.
It's not going to produce it there just because you throw it in and grow it somewhere. And so that's the problem with these bacteria. Rhamnosus is okay. It depends on who's making it and how they're making it.
Okay. Now, I brought it up because I learned that, in the low carb community, there's a lot of thought leaders who, um, they talk about anti-nutrients, they talk about oxalates and phytates,
Hmm.
and my understanding is that Lactobacillus rhamnosus and maybe others help to break these anti-nutrients down, so they can not harm us. So I guess that's my question is, if let's just say I'm a plant eater, I'm a vegetarian. And I was a vegetarian for 8 years prior to becoming more of a low carber.
Yeah.
Would it make sense that is it any benefit or more of a benefit for a vegetarian to take probiotics versus a more of a carnivore kind of eater?
No,
Because
because you can get bacteria and pesticides on a vegetarian diet, which most people don't understand. And by the way, just as on a little side trip, because we need to discuss this, that a lot of the people who have become vegans have not adopted a diet that's what I call completely natural, because some of the compounds that are made are highly processed in order
Mhm.
to conform with the vegan diet. And one of the things I can just mention right here is the new milks, like almond milk, you know uh, oat milk. You have coconut milk. If you look at the processes necessary to make these substances, they're very complex and they completely adulterate the natural state of this product. So I'm not knocking, what you're drinking. I'm just saying be cognizant of the fact that you do not want to be taking in highly processed foods in order to maintain your vegan diet. I always tell people if you want to be a vegan, learn how to make Indian food because they've had generations of success learning how to combine food and make it fresh in order to maintain a true vegan lifestyle.
Yeah, I think eating real food is so critical. I always remind people that the blue zones have longer longevity, 7 to
Hmm.
10 years longer, but you also have longevity in Hong Kong where they eat more meat. So, when you made comments earlier, it resonated with me. You said, "You know what? Is having a sense of community, taking time to digest your food, eating real food, reducing stress, getting enough sleep." Those are the
Right.
types of things that will probably um, lead to more longevity than anything else. And I think that if we are so focused on these narrow concepts and don't think about the organism, the human organism, as a total organism, I think that we may not find ourselves being where we need to go. So I think that that concept and how we think about things is really important. So I just want you to touch a little bit on um, the importance, just a little bit more on the importance of maintaining a healthy microbiome for healing purposes. Because one of the things that I did not do, that I didn't realize I wasn't doing, is that I wasn't healing patients. I was managing disease quite effectively. I would get high quality scores and things like that. But I don't know that I was a great healer. So I think lifestyle changes help us heal. Where does the probiotics fit on that healing spectrum?
Well, the true probiotic that survives and makes a home communicates with your immune cells, communicates with the cellular structure of your body, protects it from pathogens and deleterious happenings. So it allows the body to focus more on healing itself than to defending itself. That's one of the primary, benefits of a good precision probiotic supplementation program that allows the body to focus on healing itself and not protecting itself from invaders that come into the GI tract.
That's perfect. So
You know?
let me ask you another question. So when I get my probiotic, it's one capsule. And I know it has a great, we talked about it in the first episode, how that capsule has a value to protect from all of that acid before we get
Mm-hmm.
downstream where we need to let it kind of be free. But if I take two of those versus one, is there any value in doing that? And or am I disrupting the microbiome by taking
Yeah.
too much. Too much of a good
No.
thing could be bad, right?
No, actually, my friend who's a colorectal surgeon, Dr. Zuri Morel at Cedar Sinai, he decided that he needs to take two a day. I didn't quite, he just said, I tried one and then I tried two. I took one in the morning and one in the evening, and that suited me the best. And I also know people who were on chemotherapy used to take 7 to 10 a day because, chemotherapeutic drugs are the most potent antibiotics. And that's why you get fungal overgrowth when you're on chemotherapeutic drugs because they destroy the microbiome. And so it's very important that, you understand when you need to take more and your body, learn to listen to your body will know. If you're under a lot of stress, you need to take more. If you're planning to pig out during the holiday meals, you definitely need to take more because your body, even having fun is stressful. So, and I
Right.
know everybody's going to indulge. So if you're going to be indulging, I heard this silly story one day. They said, "Oh, I didn't bother taking my probiotics because I knew I was going to trash my body anyway." And I said, "For God's sakes, that's exactly when you need to take more because your body's going to be loaded with toxins. That's why you have hangovers. That's why you feel lousy the next morning." And so that's when you need to protect your body. With Thanksgiving coming up and the Christmas holidays, please, make sure you get enough of this. And when you do indulge, try to keep it at a minimum. Don't overdo it because you're going to pay for it.
Well, my babies are 23 and 25, and they always enjoy their holidays. There's no low carb going on for the holidays. And I think
Yeah.
that for people who don't have processed food addictions or carb addictions, that's okay. I'm curious, speaking of babies, I assume that the need that we have for probiotics is just as profound for our babies as it is for our adults. So if rather it's a baby all the way up to, a toddler and beyond, what's been your experience with the babies and their need for probiotics?
Oh, extreme. And again, it's another 2 hour conversation. But in the 1970s, I was the first one to start the alarm that a very important bacteria by the name of Bifidobacteria infantis is very necessary for the health of the infant. And I've come to learn that only 7% of women in westernized cultures can even pass on this bacteria to their child, even if they're vaginally born and breastfed. And interestingly enough, the human oligosaccharides are there to stimulate the specific growth of this Bifidobacteria infantis, and we've lost it in the Western cultures.
So again, I thank you, and I'm always grateful when we have conversations that help people heal. I know probiotics have helped me, and as much as I'm a low carb guy and I promote that and I encourage people to eat real whole foods, there are many ways to heal, which is why I have a nest and rope acronym to remind you of all the ways to heal. So take advantage of all of those. Be a continuous learner, and I'm just hoping that today's episode provided some clarification, more about how to restore your gut health and why. So I hope the story, the testimonies from Natasha are helpful. And I appreciate everybody who's on this health related journey. So we'll continue to teach and hold your hand and coach and mentor. And I just ask that you stay with us along the journey. So until we have another episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast, I only ask that you continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.